Hi, I'm Ann Perez. I used to be a high school English teacher, and now I create professional learning experiences like this one. I'm joined today with Danielle.
And I'm Danielle. I also used to be a high school English teacher, and just like Anne, I'm creating these experiences for you now. In our series in Building Agency, we're focusing on 3 habits that you see on your screen: reflection, collaboration, and being open to growth. And today's focus is reflection.
So, Danielle and I have done some talking and reflecting on what reflection means. And we decided to look to see what others are saying and writing about it, in particular, what research has to say. And so we found an article from the Harvard Business Review titled Why You Should Make Time for Reflection. And it summed up reflection and its importance in this way. Reflection gives the brain an opportunity to pause amidst the chaos, untangle and sort through observations and experiences, consider multiple possible interpretations, and create meaning. This meaning becomes learning, which can then inform future mindsets and actions. I don't know about you, Danielle, but when I came across this description of reflection, it kind of stopped me in my tracks because when I think about how I've used reflection and what I've been able to make of those moments, it is those verbs, those actions of pausing, untangling, sorting, considering interpretations, and even trying to create meaning so that I can make decisions. How about you?
Yeah, this also struck me. For me, a different part of the definition was really interesting. So the last part says is meaning becomes learning, which can then inform future mindsets and actions. So personally, I've always just discounted my time reflecting, which I've talked to you about that, but I'll get into that later. Essentially, I just dismiss myself as an overthinker, but I actually really do value learning in all senses of the word. And this quote confirms to me that my overthinking, but I'm not going to call it overthinking, I'm going to call it reflecting, is actually learning. It shapes my future actions, it shapes my mindsets. I find that really true, and that's also pretty empowering for me. So, we all know that reflecting is important. I knew that as a teacher. But I think the question is, how do we actually make time to reflect in our practice? So I will hand it over to you, Anne, to talk about some of the things that we came up with.
So, as I think back to my professional career as an educator, and even just personally, how I've used reflection, I noticed that I tend to be very intentional with it. And that is something that the article even suggested. One way to make time is to set the time. And for me, it's looked different. A few years ago, I'm a mom of three. Often I have to literally be in multiple places at once. So I noticed that I had free time first thing in the morning. And so a few years ago, I was reflecting right after I got up. I had a book, it had questions, I had a writing utensil. I would read some questions or read the prompt, and I would write my thoughts. Most days, I just closed the book, went on with my day, and didn't give too much thought about what I recorded until the next day when I would return, answer the new questions, and sometimes even look back to what I wrote the day before. And I started to notice patterns. And I think looking back, that sorting, that trying to pause amidst chaos, that trying to make meaning of my thoughts every day was helping to inform my decisions, my mindsets. Now, my children are slightly older, and I'm still intentionally setting that time. It's just different. Now it's at night. My youngest, who's able to independently read, reads for 20 minutes before bed. And while he's reading, I'm next to him reading as well, using that as my reflection time. I'm actually currently reading Brene Brown's Atlas of the Heart, and I'm using that just as a way to check in with what resonates with me. What am I noticing about what's in that text, and where's that showing up in my personal life or my professional work? And I've found that it's informing me in some of the decisions, making me more self-aware. How about you, Danielle?
First, I have to say that I really admire that a lot. I like the intentionality behind your reflecting. So you built an approachable habit for yourself that worked for you. And I also like the accessibility. I think a lot of teachers who are listening to this right now will be able to vibe with that. My style of reflection is a little bit different than yours. It's weird because my administrators always noted that reflection was a big strength of mine. But for a long time, I didn't really get it or necessarily agree with that because I'm not the kind of person who keeps detailed filed folders with notes. I never really set aside a notebook of reflection questions like you did. Again, I really admire that, but it's just not my style. However, I am the kind of person who does enjoy finding time and space just to think. Whenever I have some time alone, that's what I'm doing. And it actually turns out that that is legitimate. So, something from the Harvard article that really resonated with me is a following quote, and I'll read it for you. Research by Giada DiStefano, Francesca Gino, Gary Pisano, and Bradley Statz in call centers demonstrated that employees who spent 15 minutes at the end of the day reflecting about lessons learned performed 23% better after 10 days than those who did not reflect. A study of UK commuters found a similar result when those who were prompted to use their commute to think about and plan for their day were happier, more productive, and less burned out than people who didn't. So every day when I was teaching, I spent about an hour and a half to 2 hours in the car. And sure, I was just driving to and from work, but I was also really carefully considering my craft, thinking about what went right and what went wrong, figuring out how to do things for the future. Actually, some of my very best ideas came from my time in the car. I'm not sure if, like the article mentions, my thinking sessions in the car made me happier per se, but I do know that they 100% did make me more productive, more empathetic, more in tune with my craft, and I think a better teacher. So I guess the big thing I'm getting at here is that teachers, there probably is some time in the day where you're doing this already. Or if you're not doing it already, there might be some time where you could do it in a way that works for you. Even just sitting in the car thinking for a few minutes can be really powerful, and research shows that. And you don't have to necessarily pull out a notebook or have files to organize if that is not your style, like in my case. So just acknowledge and honor the reflecting that you are doing and lean into that reflecting that you're doing.
Danielle, I so appreciate that you're pulling in those moments where we are still reflecting, even if it's not intentional, because that's so true. I can think back to, again, those times where I'm sitting on the side of a soccer field and things are just popping into my mind, and I am reflecting and processing, and that information is still informing my decisions. So our key takeaways about reflection is, I think as teachers, as educators, these are things we're already doing all of the time, intentionally or not. Another good fact is that we can reflect in meaningful ways that work for us. And it's probably important that we find a way that works for us, whether it is setting aside time and writing those things down like I did, or like Danielle, capitalizing on those moments where seeds were forming. And as you mentioned, those best ideas were surfacing. And like the article and the research suggests, even a little bit of reflection can lead to big gains. I just finished reading James Clear's Atomic Habits, and something he highlights is this idea of 1% change can um, put someone's trajectory, shift that trajectory and that path in a completely different direction than where it was headed. And I think that's pretty good for just a little bit of reflection.
I really like that idea of 1% change. Doesn't have to be huge. Those little moments can add up. So, what is next? We love Jennifer Porter's article in the Harvard Business Review, as we've mentioned multiple times. So, if you're interested, we definitely recommend checking that out. As a bonus, it's pretty short and simple. We'll also point you back to PD on a Page For ideas for how to begin and sustain your reflective practice, check out the resources that we have listed there. And that is it for today. We really enjoyed learning with you, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.